Well, let us begin as far as you are all here and all of our speakers are here. So my name is Irina Ardinskaya. I work in SKB Kontor, and today I will be moderating the roundtable devoted to digitization of economy. Let me first introduce our speakers to you, who, as I hope, will tell you a lot of interesting things. Sergei Kalugin, Deputy Minister of Digital Development and Communications. Dmitry Mramorov, CEO of the best company in the world. You know which company I'm talking about. Tatiana Rivyakina, Director for Development of Severstal Center of Uniform Services. Andrei Kirillov, representing here Center for Development of Progressive Technology. He will tell us about the digital twins. Wonderful Igor Sergeyev. He is heading the Department of Digital Production of a super gigantic company, Siemens. Alexei Mitenkov, TMK Group, also digital production. And finally, Anton Yanovsky. He's representing the Agency of Technological Development, and he will tell us everything about marking, as I hope. So all you know that digital economy is one of four the large-scale projects out of 13. At least it's number 4 in terms of scope of funding, but that work that is supposed to be performed under this project cannot be implemented by the government only or by the company only. So far, the activity has to be joint. And now I think that we will learn about how things happen and what happens in this respect. Let us listen to our speakers in order to have a complete understanding. We invited the regulators, vendors, and developers of technologies and the real sector as well. Sergey, please, we would give the floor to you. Speaking of the regulators, what digitization is for your ministry, and are there any useful tools that you are preparing for the real sector, for industry? Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, everyone is speaking a lot about digital economy nowadays, and all of us are related to this process. And I will try to tell you briefly about the project that we are implementing right now together with the Ministry of Industry. Unfortunately, our colleague is not here. That is why sorry if if I do not provide all of the details. But anyway, I will try to outline what we are doing together with the Ministry of Industry. There is a section in our digital economy program that is called Digital Industry. This section is related to different branches of industry. And you'll understand that the program we're discussing in respect to digital economy needs to be readjusted somehow, because if we're speaking about digital economy that is used by the developed countries, we are mainly oriented to products. And this is a thesis that everyone understands if we look at the Korean program or German Industry 4.0. If Germans and Koreans do something really properly and you know how to sell it, they have the money for development, they know how to satisfy people, and their programs are oriented on the maintenance of the long-term competition. And here they have the stories related to figures, materials, HR training, and they have a kind of a complex approach. They have developed programs, and we are lagging behind from Germans. And that story that I am going to tell you about is just the first step in this direction, but nevertheless, we are walking closely with the Ministry of Industry towards this direction. Being at this wonderful exhibition and seeing how digital technology and digital industry is developing, once we see a lot of high-tech companies here, we can make a few conclusions about what's going on in this respect. The first conclusion is that we are not integrated into the global picture. We won't say that we don't have good engineers or good companies, but we don't see global technological leaders, I mean engineering companies or the companies that somehow deal with the production of production means, so to speak. And here we do not see any companies that produce platforms. That is, we understand that digitization is inevitable, and we just need to understand who will be the main beneficiary here. And our task is that benefits has to be provided for our companies, not just consumers of different solutions, but companies that are directly involved in the process. And now what we have done, we have covered a lot, and in this process we had different companies and corporations interacting. We had different innovative centers from St. Petersburg, Moscow, such companies as Rosatom, a lot of companies involved, and as a result of this joint effort, we created a digital landscape of the company. We tried to depict which systems are being used. We got an understanding, at least it seems to us, where the systems should move, how the systems are to be developed, and we tried to overlap the systems with the landscape that we are familiar with. And we tried to get an understanding what the Russian companies are doing and on what stage of development they are. And as a result, we produced a program that consists of 3 parts. First of all, the main thing is related to support of the leading companies, those companies that produce solutions. And these are the companies that are capable of being compatible in the market. So far, we need to support the producers of production means. I'm not speaking about producers or manufacturers of robots, but I'm speaking of producers of industrial platform. I'm speaking about those companies involved in IT. So the second track here is related to the fact that we are supposed to support the industrial companies which want to implement the development and solutions. As far as there is a certain set of measures that describe how these things are supposed to be done. And secondly, we are supposed to create engineering centers. The Ministry of Industry has a large-scale plan for it. And we need to create associations and consortiums that shall be local, and maybe in future, those would be global consortiums and that would compete with industrial giants. And this program is being developed at the moment. Maybe it's difficult to speak about the details of this program without the Ministry of Industry, because it's more related to IT stories here, and they were better involved in this. And speaking of certain mechanisms, probably it would be better if the Ministry of Industry colleagues would tell us about it. But what is important to be said about this is the fact that the purpose of this project is clearly understood by everyone in the audience. It will allow to create such strategies which would be optimum for your development. And you will have an understanding of what the government thinks about it, where the industry is moving towards. And we just need to see the path which you can cover with the support of the government. If we're speaking about the details, maybe you will hear, you will give me some questions and I will be able to answer them. Here I would also say that together with the Ministry of Industry, we have outlined the path. in which we want to support the development of different consortiums and associations. Because as a rule, our companies make just the element of this system or a certain platform. But if we want to make a competitive product for different transactions which would not be associated with higher costs, it is possible only within certain consortiums and associations. And maybe in a while it will result in development of large industrial giants. This is it. Thank you. Thank you very much. And as far as I understand, speaking of different spheres in digital economy, it's mainly related to regulation by different authorities like Ministry of Industry, Ministry of Communications, or Ministry of Trade. And unfortunately, the representative of the Ministry of Trade was not able to attend due to an emergency meeting with the representatives with the Deputy Minister. And speaking of the future projects, and if we speak about SKB Contour as the vendor of technologies, here I would like to mention an interesting thing. Our company is in the market for about 30 years. Every third company in Russia is using our products. And in spite of this, we're still growing rapidly. IT branch of industry growth last year was 8–9%, but our growth was about 20%. Maybe Dmitry will tell us a secret about how this is achieved.
Good day, dear colleagues. I would like to continue talking on the topic which Sergey has started about the changes that we see from the point of view of producer of software, producer of solutions for businesses. So the first thing we see is that software acquires an increasing role. We see it from the point of view of structure of purchases and from the point of view of influence on how business is operating. And what used to be an addition and more investments were into hardware, into upgrade, now the role of software is increasing. And the problem that was raised that there are not enough domestic developers and they do not cover all the needs of industrial enterprises. This is the objective situation in Russia. And it needs to be addressed. Whether it can be addressed via consortiums or national champions, well, we'll see that. But my personal opinion is that from the point of view of regulators, a key question is about creating the environment, the conditions for growth of those companies that we're discussing today. Because the problem of the market, the Russian market, it is there, it exists. For many years, there's been, important solutions that were implemented, and now for the company to reach the market of the big market of systems, well, that's tough, that's difficult, and it's capital intensive. And our company approaches this task from a different perspective. What we do globally, we are looking into availability of contemporary technologies for a large number of enterprises. What we have been witnessing for the past 7 years is the fact that information technologies become highly available. Because 10–15 years ago, well, those who were working with large corporate systems, there were data exchange modules already, data exchange module between large corporate systems, but that was a rare thing. Another story was related to the fact that all those systems were installed in specific local enterprises. Now, it turned upside down practically. If you take the environment in which a business operates, then one of the key trends today is that those information systems which are now installed at any company, whether it's small or big, there are a lot of them, and they start communicating with each other. That's why one of the key trends which we see today is that products are communicate between themselves in a smart way through program interfaces, through various technologies or internet. So a company is now developing a single fabric, a single structure for its operation, and not and by saying a single structure, I'm talking not just about this company, but this structure includes their vendors and customers, and this structure sets requirements to the developers which offer solutions to such companies. And there are challenging, there are sophisticated solutions if we're talking about machine building companies or oil and gas. But the communication of these various systems between them, this is a pressing issue today, and the developers need to take into account. Speaking about the second trend that we observe today, the second trend is that during the past several years, we have seen a massive increase in the volume of data. But still, there is still no systemic business analytics. Or easily accessible business analytics. Still, all those solutions are rather bulky and not easy to operate with. So what we work with big data. And those sources of data available in Russia, open source data first of all, or the internet, we try to structure them and use them. So all this data science and machine learning, all these technologies are being used quite actively, and that allows taking those big volumes of data, structure them, and provide them to our users. An example of where these systems are used currently is, for example, a due diligence of counteragents or counterparties. So the system which are built on open data, the systems which take into account various interrelations and which make it possible to get the information related to a company from the internet. So this is a technology which is used actively right now. And again, we say that a company is not operating in a vacuum. A company is operating in open space. It communicates with other companies. It communicates with its clients. Another example where these technologies are used, we all know, well, I don't know if my colleagues are going to be talking about it or not, there's a national catalog of products. And it's a long story. An idea is to standardize globally, and as far as I know, for now, there is only one catalog existing, and I think NATO created it. But we'll come back to that. It's a challenging task, and what we see in real life is that when a company receives an invoice, and I have a shop, for example, I have 10,000 product names, and I need to somehow enter all those into a database or a warehouse base, and a lot of time is needed for that. And the technologies which are available to us, the technologies we use, they allow scanning those documents and send them electronically, which is a perfect option, and create those catalogs automatically, simply by using the information technologies and applied science which is used here. And in conclusion, I would like to say that the third trend we are witnessing, primarily in small business for now, is that people do not want to work within the scope of a certain functionality, like we saw it previously, like accounting, warehouse, so on. Because if we're talking about automation, we're talking about automation of the process overall process without separating it into separate blocks. And the present day solutions, they are following that logic. So the ideal picture for small business, for small companies, that when entrepreneur doesn't even know how to file tax reporting because the system does it for you. There are such systems when banks file all the tax reports, and you don't even need to know about how it works. You just need to make a few clicks on the screen with a mouse. And we have a quite representative selection of clients today. And I think that the efforts of the regulator, which are available now, what Ministry of Trade does, they will bear fruit. And I wish that the dialogue with the sector, with the industry continues to develop. And I think this is what's happening. So we have hopes. And the national champions in Russia, they will emerge and they will grow to become global champions as well. Thank you, Dmitry. And I would like to add a couple of words on my behalf to say that SKB Kontor is a company with a human face. And Dmitry said an important point, that when SKB Kontor develops its products, it is guided by the user needs and how user-friendly the software are. This counterparty due diligence program has a functionality which allows you to check international counterparties, counteragents. Although it includes Kazakhstan and Belarus, the plans are great. Our government demonstrated the trend to make the economy transparent, and there are a lot of things confirming that. Tough tax requirements, regulation of alcohol consumption, online cashiers, various payment systems, Platon for cargo transportation, Mercury for agriculture products. And I believe that the unified marking system, which Andrei Kirillov is going to talk about, it is in the same plane. So, Andrei, could you tell us what is the value of your system and how can it help business, or will it make the regulations tougher? And which industries are connected to this system? What are the short-term plans?
I will tell everything and will not hide everything from you. So I represent the company CRPT, the Center of Development of Perspective Technologies, which is a national operator for marking systems and traceability systems. Next slide, please. Everything is okay, still can't figure out which button to press. Digital technology here, as you see. Slides are very important because there are a lot of nice pictures and useful information. Hooray. So as it has already been mentioned by Irina, we have a kind of disorder in different systems. This is a system for regulation of alcohol products. We have a system for marking the fur products. We have a system for electronic veterinary certificates, Mercury, which has just been launched. And it was a decision taken in Russia to create a uniform, harmonized system of marking, digital marking, that allows to integrate all of the data in one and the same location and to collect all of the information and provide it for the market, provide it for the government, and provide it for ordinary people. Our company is involved in 3 feasibility projects. The feasibility project on tobacco products, medical products, and shoe products. In compliance with the decree of the government, there will be 10 categories, which would be the first categories mandatory for marking. Here we just demonstrated briefly the main principles we are trying to follow. First of all, it would be one operator, because this operator will provide an opportunity to use the uniform data, and this is the main advantage of the large bulk of data. And this uniform operator will be responsible for the national catalog of products. This is really a very important issue because all of the operators of the different databases, and they come to see that they don't see the information in the cash check. And if there is a uniform identifier, this is a thing that would allow to have the uniform approach to marking and traceability of all of the information for a certain type of products, and it will give you an understanding of the uniqueness of a product, and to trace all of the life cycle stages of the product. And thus we will be harmonized with the European Union as far as we're working as the government-private partnership. The government does not invest into this system. Just the private businesses invest into development of the system. And in the right corner, in the top right corner of the slide, you see the QR code. But this is the data matrix. This is a unique identifier, unique digital identifier protected with cryptotale, which make it impossible for fakes. And it will be integrated with online cash registries, and due to registration of the turnover of this product, starting from production through logistics and retail sales, for example, as different medications, arrival to hospitals, injections, pills, it allows to collect all of this information. And what is also important, this is a Fairmark. Once we launch this system, this is the system that will be associated with the public control over the system. This is for the consumers to obtain the information about the origin of the goods, and if these are fakes, they will be able to address the corresponding government authorities. I will just tell you briefly about the marking system, how it works in all of the stages. You can read this slide from the left to right. And when manufacturers produce the product, they mark it with a unique identifier. The operator will install the crypto device that will generate this code, and the entire path this product goes will be subject to this identifier. When it arrives to the store, they will scan the code and it will put it in the shelf. We think that within about 5 years, all these marked goods will use the same unique identifier instead of using 2 or 3 codes as they're doing in retail right now. Thus, it will make all the logistics easier, and it will show its arrival to the cash registry. As soon as these goods are sold, the fiscal registry or the security model used in a recorder is connected to the information system and takes it out of the turnover. And the entire information about the product will be in the mobile application Fairmark. As I have already said, the marking system is oriented on 3 participants, and the main participant is business. It is very important because it is very important to improve transparency in business and to reduce the share of fakes. we see that the statistics is really very frightening in terms of fakes in products in different branches of industry. Everything related to security and safety of people's life is really a matter of concern in terms of fakes. And such identification allows solving two tasks. First of all, we will see the legal turnover, the increase the share of it. And secondly, this is the reduction of fakes and the amount of fakes, and this is related to safety. And of course, we will get more and more taxes paid, but this is not the major task, even though the program is being promoted for digital marking. We do not see any tax benefits from it. Another important point is that the consumers would see the public control over it. This is something that gives an opportunity for any person to use the application Fairmark. They can scan the code in any location and get the information where it's right or not. And at this moment of time, using the geolocation, they will be able to inform the regulatory authority about the fact of the sales of different fakes. And we are expecting the response for this mobile application. Hypothetically, it is called the reviewer. And it will give people an opportunity to collect the information and provide information for the regulatory authorities about fakes. And we also think that we will be associated with the topic of gamification, and we think that the most active citizens who will participate in this, they will get the real money. By using the bonus system, they will be able to earn the money for the work they're doing. Well, I want to find the slide with the catalog, but still have no idea how to do it. In compliance with the decree of the government, being operating company for the marking system, we are supposed to produce the national catalog, which would give the possibility to collect the data, process the data, and give the unique identifier for the goods. We decided not to be limited with it and just to provide free national catalog of products for the market, at least those products that are in mass turnover. What the national catalog is? There is a web page. I invite you to access this web page. It's called National Catalog. This is a web page at which you will see about 160,000 different products with different level of digitalization. We consider that this catalog will be free for the market. We are not planning to take money for it, for the use of this catalog. We're just developing the uniform code. And the Uniform National Code would be the identifier for unique product. It includes the 3D picture of the product, its features, and about from 1 to 15 parameters that are description of this product. We are working on this catalog in partnership with X5 retailer, and we are actively communicating with other retail companies and manufacturers in order to digitize almost all of the products available in turnover, to provide access for the producers and retail networks to this catalog. Maybe it's not evident for those who is looking with the big data, but the reality is that both manufacturers and retail networks, they spend a lot of tremendous money and tremendous human resources for maintaining their catalogs and maintaining the catalogs in state of the art. Because just if you take as an example of a bottle of water, it may be 20% more, but with the same QR code, which is not acceptable for the retail, and this is the situation that has to be changed. I can speak a lot about the catalog. I will try anyway to get to that slide that tells us about the digital future. If I don't manage, then I will tell you in words. Now we see it. It's very important that within digitalization and within those things that are being discussed by my colleagues, the large amount of data becomes available in life. Those who produce water, medicine, or tobacco, they get the information that those products that they produce are produced, say, in a factory in St. Petersburg, then logistics bring them to a certain location, and then sold in Voronezh, for example. And they know which particular shop these products were sold. And thus we are able to obtain the information about the product line, and we are also capable of getting the information of different product sets. And having this information, we can make different conclusions. The electronic document exchange allows to make logistics easier and get transferred to reporting documents in electronic format. And as for the Industry 4.0, this is what many people are dreaming about, and people started to proceed with it. And I know that in Russia this process has already been started, and it allows obtaining a lot of information. And based on this information, it allows making unexpected conclusions and the variety of different conclusions. And what is also important is the fact that it allows to obtain the information about what people eat, what they drink, what they smoke, what medicines they use, and what they get dressed with. Thank you, Andrei. Just one minor clarification. How do you select the goods to be marked? Like you've mentioned, fur, tobacco products, pharmaceuticals, maybe it's just due to the share of fakes in the market. Unfortunately, we don't have the colleagues from the Ministry of Trade and Industry, but there is a decree of the government which outlines these groups of product. And it's not by chance that I have mentioned about the official statistical data on the fakes. And also data on fakes that are being collected by different analytical agencies. As a joke, I can just tell you about the story about the number of fur coats that we used to have in Russia before marking. We used to have 150,000 fur coats, and after marking procedure was implemented, we have the rapid increase in the number of fur coats in Russia. And the most likely, those people who make this list, they understand why this is being done. I would just like to ask people in the audience who don't have the fur coat yet. Now we proceed with Siemens Corporation. Igor is saying that Siemens proceeds with the digitization from themselves, and I know that you have an experience for marking and for control over the production process, and we would like you to tell us about it.
Good day, dear friends. The topic of digitization, even if we take a standalone industry, it is a multifaceted issue, and one needs to listen to all round tables which take place here during the week, and only then one might get a more or less complete understanding of what digitization is. Most importantly, what we've realized for ourselves as a corporation during the previous years is that digitization, if you are working in it. It should be present in the entire product cycle and life cycle. Only then you'll get the best effect, the ultimate effect, which is described on the slides. Now, I'm a bit panicky because I am hesitating what aspects should I start discussing. Well, probably one of the examples which had been mentioned about the colleagues. Well, if we talk about marking, then it's an interesting topic, and not even marking, but identification of the product inside the company, inside the enterprise. It's interesting aspects. Imagine that a product or a raw material enters the territory of the enterprise and a finished product leaves the territory. And what's needed is that data at every stage of production are stored somewhere. It can be a centralized model or decentralized. So, for example, we offer radio frequency identification marks, RFID. Or if we take Kamaz, that's the system where we are implementing it, or metallurgical companies in Russia or other car manufacturing plants. The idea is that this mark is attached to a product, and then this product carries all the data, what has been done with it, when, and for what, and what's been changed, or if it's a carrier, a pallet, or a traverse, or a crowbar, which carries information about this product, if this is a big product. And what's interesting is that this system makes it possible to increase the flexibility of the production. So the produce a lot of modification within the same process cycle. If we talk about cars, for example, a lot of configurations, and in order to get the proper engine in the proper place and the proper body color according to the order. So this system makes it possible by using buffer warehouses. It creates your specific custom-made vehicle on the conveyor belt. And this information can be included into the radio frequency carrier, and the car will have it under the hood, and you'll be able to use it in your structure of sales, monitoring its life cycle, including service, including maintenance, sale and resale, etc. Another example which I would like to give is from a totally different area, but it's about digitization. That's what's been mentioned today. That's electronic document circulation. Honestly, we stopped doing marketing. We are doing. Siemens in Russia today is using 100. All the documents are electronic, starting the offer for the customer, the contract, electronic signature, issuing all the documents needed to the customer, including invoices and bills of lading. All these are electronic, and they're delivered to the customer in electronic form a day before the customer receives the goods even. So for ourselves, as a result, we reduced internal operation costs for the past 2.5 years. We reduced our operational costs twofold. So the number of people who work, we reduced the number of people. We didn't fire them, we just reoriented them. They're working in different areas, doing other functions. And what's interesting, if you take large corporate groups, foreign corporate groups, all Russian companies are involved in that gladly. So the topic of digitization of such processes in Russia is developing even more rapidly than in European countries. And another thing I'd like to say, and it was mentioned in the beginning, speaking about know-hows and Russian consortiums. I'm a person who is a citizen of Russia, but I've worked for 30 years in a foreign company. And I must say that it would be right to combine those possibilities and opportunities. We had Rostech representative here yesterday, and he compared digitization with wine making, and he talked about blending of wine in order to get a particular taste. And he meant that if you take a specific know-how existing in the world and you add Russian intellect of Russian engineers and developers to it, then we'll get this unique blend and taste and aroma. So honestly, everything Siemens offers today in Russia and globally, these are open platforms, and what we say is that other companies are moving in the same direction, and I think that Russian companies have all the possibilities of further development towards digitization. And yesterday, the stand of the Ministry of Trade, this is what we saw at the stand of the Ministry of Trade yesterday. If you have questions, you can always visit us at our stand, Pavilion number 1. They'll show you everything there, give you more details than I have. Thank you very much. Well, I think the questions can be asked later. If we have time, then we could ask questions to Igor. Since we started talking about electronic document circulation, excuse me, is Anatoly Ovsyannikov present here? Okay, going back to electronic document circulation, paperless office and non-production processes. Probably one of the brightest examples of a paperless office is the center of single uniform single service of the Severstal. It's not just multifunctional, it is also multi-regional. And it stays within the keeps up with the global trend, and it provides services not only to the companies of its own group, but other companies as well. Tatiana Rivakina will share their secrets and their technologies. Please start the slides.
Thank you. In principle, you have already appraised our system, and maybe nothing should be said about it. Once I represent the business, I think, have you ever heard about the uniform service centers? I think I'm not the only one. The business I represent, I will tell you in details. It is digits and technology dependent. We're speaking about outsourcing of business processes, non-related to production processes. In our case, we're speaking about outsourcing of human resources, processes, procurement, and sales processes. Very often, it happens that we outsource those things that do not work properly, and the client is waiting that you do something better than the client, and the client don't want to invest in a certain development because they know that you will do it better. In these cases, we do not discuss whether we automatize or robotize the process. The case here is the survival. But the story we are going to tell you about, we are speaking about insourcing. We were established in 2009 as a division of Severstal subsidiary to accompany and support financial processes, just the financial processes related to Severstal activities. But as Irina has just said, this is not just the group related to our shareholders, but now we deal with other companies who are interested in our services. We have 80, 100 workplaces every year. We're represented in different countries, not only in Russia Federation. We are represented in Western Africa and Kazakhstan. We provide services in 3 languages, and we always look at the trend related to digitization and automation. And when I answered to your question, what is subject to automation, I would say that any process, if it's subject to description by any algorithm which is not as changeable as the Russian legislation, which is rather stable, when you can determine when the process is intended to be brought into operation, and if you are able to obtain the data automatically, you have an understanding that you have something to work with. If you see high costs associated with the process, so far the payback increases. And I said that our clients do not like to spend the money on improvement of efficiency of their processes. That is why we learn how to do it, and how to do it just smoothly for the clients. It's integrated with business processes. Our electronic data exchange system is integrated with the business process, and this is something related to space. We are capable of doing to make these spaceships more friendly with different software products, like contour products, for example. These are just light instruments, such as macrosys, robots. Any step we undertake in automation shall be evaluated from the point of view of efficiency of implementation. If we speak about a robot, then it would be associated with high prices. And I think it will never live forever. And if we have such an instrument as Excel, why don't we use it? And that is why, if we speak of automation, first of all, we need to evaluate whether it's effective or not. And in this sense, we're changing the culture. Our number of the personnel is 800. And 200 people know how to make the process automatic themselves. We're changing the culture within the company. We stopped being IT customers. We learned our staff people how to make the process automated. Since 2015, we started to be actively involved in this sphere, and since 2017, we started to evaluate the scale of the process, and we just came to conclusion that only in 2017 we managed to free 50 workplaces. Take into account our rapid growth, we do not dismiss the personnel. We just provide them an opportunity to develop their skills in new directions, and we have more than 60 different processes in our service center, and these processes are automated. And one of the examples that we can demonstrate as the electronic data exchange and circulation friendly, we have a robot. We call it Vitalik. I don't know why we call him so. No one has ever given me an answer to this. But what this robot is capable of doing every day, he comes to Contour, he analyzes text requirements. This robot accesses Contour, analyzes the text requirements, new text requirements, not just reviews them, but analyzes. He understands what text this is, what period this text is intended for, what is the essence of this requirement. So this robot has an emotional intellect. If something is outstanding, he knows that he is supposed to approach the tax expert, and he will not distribute the tax requirements among the personnel, but he knows how this has to be done. This is robotization, which would not cost anything for our clients, but this is something that our clients really need, and this will make our life easier. And we have such tools that will make the life for our staff people easier. I don't see SAP representative here. They probably left. But if somebody is interested, together with SAP, we have master classes in respect to robotization. Thank you, Tatiana. I would like to ask you a small question. Speaking of the Uniform Service Center, it means that the business has to be transformed, and any transformation is related to work with human resources. Do you see any resistance coming from personnel? Maybe you can just give a few words about it. Briefly, yes, we face such resistance, and you've mentioned correctly that uniform center of services is something really easy, but if you get to execution, it will be associated with different complex things. We are interfering into business processes, culture, organizing structure. All of the wheels of this system shall be reoriented. It will start running anew. I would say that I've already faced such projects when everyone start applauding when they hear the idea of the uniform center of services. But I would say that this is not the case. If we speak about the success and what is the main prerequisite for the success, I would say that we were created with an idea that we will save the money for the company. But we would say that people will look the opportunities for saving the money, but the non-financial benefit will always be the case. If it's not the big company, and if the company is geographically distributed, if you have diversified businesses, probably such system would be the only instrument that would provide the uniformity. And if your stakeholder shares the views, you would say that the stakeholder will be the main driver for the process. Yes, of course. If the project is not shared by the top management, you may not even start it. Maybe people heard about also, they probably heard that these people always make mistakes. Yes, this is the case. But being as the former chief accountant, mistakes are the case. But if we're speaking about a local division, we will always do things that no one will learn about it. But if we're speaking also, or if we're speaking about the uniform service center, we are speaking about the culture of providing services, and any mistakes or failures will never be hidden. And that is why probably we should not look at this. We always hear that people will not proceed with the uniform service center because they are afraid to lose any job or level of skills. Factors are different, but one should know how to control different factors, and the factors have to be integrated into a uniform project. Alexei, I know that you have your own experience, and very interesting experience in terms of handling the personnel. And I would like you to tell us about your digital corporative culture and how you handle the problems and how you plan to handle the problems at your new position.
Good day, dear colleagues, dear friends. And I suggest unmeeting the first part of the question, because I kind of torture myself with the question, why do we need to track shoes? Well, tracking alcohol, fur coats is fine. It's subject to excise tax, but why do we need to track shoes? Would you like to start a discussion? It's just, I don't have an answer. It's very easy. I don't know how many shoes there are in the country. So what? Well, what do you mean, so what? I don't know how to control this mic. It's just, what's the number of shoes in the country? Well, why do I need the number of shoes? No, it's, I'm sorry, but it's, I have to answer to the question with a question, but if you know the number of shoes, just say the number. Well, I don't know. Naturally, I don't know the number of shoes. Great. So you answered the first half of the question. But I know two statistics. One said that there are 240,000 pair of shoes. Another statistic says there's 780,000 pair of shoes. Both cost money. Do you know how much is produced in Russia and what's the number imported? But what does it give to the consumer that pays? That's what I can't understand. For the consumer, it gives confidence that the consumer buys what's produced in Turkey and not in China. Well, it's up to the producer to decide. I mean, there's a consumer rights protection law, right? Alexei Vladimirovich, come on. We are fighting counterfeit products, right? The country. It's because we need to make informed decisions. And if it's the same code like with a bottle of water, or it's a pair of shoes which looks leather and it says they're made in Italy, but really with the same code they can be made in 15 different factories in China and 12 factories in Turkey, then the consumer does not have an informed opinion about what this consumer is buying. And by using the marking, it gives an informed opinion about what this consumer is buying. Can I give a simple answer to? I don't want fake Italian boots and Louis Vuitton. You can't buy a Louis Vuitton bag in the underground station, in the metro station. Uh, let them be tracked. So let us go back to our core subject and talk about experience of working with the personnel. Yes, the colleagues has talked a lot about the tools, and they've said a lot of correct things. They said about the ideal landscape and digital manufacturing and smart production. I've made notes, but I've been working for many years in automation, and I've worked from various sides, from business. I've been chief accountant of a large holding company for many years. Then I worked on the side of IT. And every time, when for the past 10 years, people were coming to us with automation, it reminded me a reposition of chairs on the Titanic that was sinking. So people sit, they work, and then they say, let's make it automatic. And then I ask a question, are you ready to change people? I agree with the colleagues from Severstal who talked about automation. It's a very difficult process. It's like a storm inside the company, and people are not ready for it, and support is needed from top. So if we talk about automation, my opinion is you need to think what for, and don't try to make automatic what's already there, what's working. Do not try to add tools to the existing processes that are working, because otherwise you'll get an increase in costs and no effect unless it is required by law. That's the first thing. Number two, what is digital culture and what is the objective of digital transformation? I've been thinking about it for a long time, and I think there are two things here. Number one, digital transformation can say, well, 10 fingers. Digital transformation can be what? It can be an index finger. Do you think people are going to like it if digital transformation indicates them where to go? I don't think that people are going to like it very much unless it's Severstal or one-stop service center. What do people probably expect? People probably expect that digital transformation becomes what finger? A thumb, right? Because a thumb is what makes a hand a hand. And in this case, digital transformation should be working with those functions: production, HR, finance, accounting, providing the tool which is available in digitization. And organizational changes, changing the culture, they should be coordinated by HR services. They should be coordinated by corporate universities. But by giving the tools only without the connection with the second part, I don't think we'll get benefits from automation unless we do this. But then we need to let go the people, but that's wrong because it contradicts the interests and business stability because it's a surgical procedure. So that's my second statement. And my third statement is people don't love change, And if people and business haven't changed for many years, that probably creates certain problems when digital transformation processes come into play or any other transformation. And here the objective is not to build an ideal landscape So you might sit and wait for an ideal landscape for 2 years. You can create ideal platforms. But the objective here is that people get used to continuous changes. And I have this parallel analogy in my head. I'm sitting like this. I don't have to do anything. I might, if I want, I can turn my head. If I want, I can turn my head back. But imagine you're underwater and you're a diver. And if you do nothing, what's going to happen? You'll be sinking. So probably here, if we talk about the objective of digital transformation of culture, is that they adapt to continuous changes. I call it digital underwater swimming. And this is what is important for me, because there are no ideal platforms. There is no ideal traceability. We don't know really what's going to happen in 2 years. Maybe something really super great is going to be invented that will discard all our catalogs, certification systems, spheres, or maybe Siemens might invent something new, and you see how the development is going. And this is where, well, the world is not perfect. Nobody is perfect. But the objective, the digital underwater swimming, if you are great in it, you'll win, like SKB Kontur and Dmitry Marmarov. Thank you. Alexei Vladimirovich loves and respects his colleagues. Don't think bad of him. I don't see Anton Eduardovich. I apologize. I'll move. Anton Eduardovich will tell us about one of the experiences of creating a digital twin. I think you've heard about this technology. It is not new. It's probably 5 years old, so a very sophisticated mathematical model is created, which can be used to calculate different influences, external and internal, hence increasing efficiency. Well, I am spoiled by classic economic education, and I compare it with a classical scenario analysis. But here it's implemented at a different level. And Mr. Sergeyev is looking at me very intently, and I hope that he will also add what Anton Eduardovich has to say. Anton Eduardovich will talk about a case scenario. It's an aircraft company, and they decided they need a digital twin when they were moving from full cycle to distributed one. So when not only the companies and their own corporations are involved, but external parties as well. Anton, thank you, dear colleagues. And if I may, first of all, I would like to invite the organizers for the invitation to such an interesting panel and discussion. And secondly, what I'm going to be talking about is not a project or about creating a digital twin. It's just a teeny tiny step. No, it's a big step. It's a huge step. For us, it's a huge step. I'll start my presentation. Where do I press for the slide to move the slides? All previous speakers presented companies which don't need to be introduced. They're well known in the market. And the agency I represent is only 2 years old. It was created by the government of the Russian Federation to address difficult tasks, to help Russian companies in finding new technological solutions, global level solutions, which would enhance their competitiveness. And finding, it's not purchasing. I don't mean purchasing, but it's a sophisticated process of choosing and understanding why the company needs those technologies and how can they influence the competitiveness. And the problems which have been mentioned recently after the culture has been changed and the internal processes have been changed, etc. So they also become part of our vision. We can't do a lot yet, but we've achieved certain things, including the project which I'm going to tell you about. It shows that we are, well, if not on the right way, but at least what we do is in demand. So the next slide, how we see this mechanism as the agencies established by the government of the Russian Federation and how a developing institution can help the companies. So we see this mechanism. In future, we see it as an ecosystem. And if a company becomes part of it, it can interact with the participants of that ecosystem or a network, finding the appropriate technological solution, finding the partners which will help implement that technological solution. But at the start, we have simplified the model, and we say that a company comes to us and we help it understand its technological problem, technological barrier. And it's not a secret that sometimes a company only thinks that it has a barrier, but in reality the barrier is totally different. And the previous speakers has mentioned it. We help create a project consortium, and as it's a trendy word here is a sandbox. So within a sandbox we try to find, and there was a parallel with wine blending. So this is similar. We're trying to create unique solutions based on the existing ones, but which needs fine-tuning so that they could help the company to be more competitive. And one of the projects that we have implemented so far with the aircraft building corporation, a United Aircraft Corporation is like a substructure above the aircraft industry in Russia. Its job is to rebuild the model of production and move to those business models which have been proven efficient globally, connected with a large number of vendors, changing in operating chains, and so on. And there are a lot of economic issues here, and the aviation corporation need to build certain scenarios about how to do it. It's clear there are a lot of methodologies, and the aircraft corporation asked us to become the partner to help it create a prototype of information and analytical system that would help it build such scenarios. It is clear that there are ready-made solutions available on the market, and that includes the companies present here. But starting a conversation with a large vendor is always easier when you know what you need. And if you simplify a project, and it was done with two IT companies, SB Group and Esmion. So the way is to create a prototype to address seemingly simple tasks related with the assessment of process costs, economic costs, then generate certain cooperation scenarios and assess technological capabilities of that process chain. I will not go into details how it was organized, but 2 weeks ago this project was defended in the aircraft corporation, and it was a success. My objective here is to demonstrate the questions about what life cycle steps of life cycle can be used. Well, my colleagues can tell more about it, but my job is to tell about the role of the agency which we have created here, and I think this role is helpful for those companies which are not too big, which cannot invest heavily into purchasing ready-made solutions, and which are ready to change quickly themselves. But it is for those companies who lack those resources, who need some recommendations, who need a choice, who want to test something. So this slide, the key conclusions that we have when we talk about this model of work. So what we can, how we help, if we talk about this digital twin, then, and in case with the United Aircraft Corporation, the task becomes more complicated, not just because it's a big company, but because they're restructuring the model, and it's not quite clear what are you making the digital twin for, because the digital twin will be changing as the model changes. At the start, you need to have an understanding of what is possible, take into account the plans. So helping the customer to formulate the objective clearly is one of our functions. Then to organize risk management. It's been said here that all innovations are connected with risk, and sometimes the company is not ready to carry those risks. Creating a subdivision which will be implementing solutions, it means hiring people which you will have to fire later on. A project consortium, external one, helps overcome this barrier. And for those who are offering ready-made solutions, it is a good playground as well, the cooperation with the agency, because through the agency you can understand the needs of the customer better. Sometimes the customer doesn't always talk about the weak sides because he doesn't want the vendor to know. And the creation of the information system is also an important aspect of our work, which makes it possible for the company owners and for the decision makers to plan the budget properly. So it's one thing when you're offered a project which costs 1 billion rubles, and it's another case when they tell you you can start small with smaller projects of different scale, but which won't require heavy investments from the start. I'll probably wrap it up here. If there are questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you, Anton Eduardovich. And our stand is in Pavilion 2.
Igor, I know that in your corporation you have a very interesting case when the digital twin was made at the electrical motors producing plant. You had the digital twins, and those twins were controlled from the center. Because this is a real business, please tell us what was happening there. First of all, I will give a comment. What you have just heard is one more of aspects of a new business model. Digitization at the first stage requires kind of a review or auditing the situation and further consulting. Yesterday, there was a question asked in this audience where digital teams has to be located, inside the company or outside. Speaking about the human resources, the situation today is that, speaking of digitalization experts, we do not have many of them. That is why many companies require kind of external review, external analysis. This is really a very interesting topic. As for the example we've been talking about, I've already mentioned that Siemens starts with itself. We have already digitized our company in terms of electronic data exchange and the electronic document circulation. We have made it. We have made it to our companies in Russia and in China. In Russia, we have only 3 sites, and we're speaking about the server drive production company. It's in Germany, in Bavaria, in Bad Neustadt. It's really very interesting to visit this place. They have a tour around the plants. They have a digital showroom. And unlike me, who is involved in marketing, propaganda, these guys just show and demonstrate why they have done different types of operation, why they have chosen the direction. For me, it was real shock. I'm a person who was involved for CNC machines in the 80s, and I found out that there is a model of 8 machines. They do not have the control board. It was really a surprise. So you're speaking about CNC machines. Yes, we have CNC machines, but without control board. There is just a CNC machine, but there is no control room. And there is just a piece of paper on the wall. And one of the directors of the Russian company asked what this piece of paper was. And the foreman explained that there is a kind of a psychological nonsense. It's just a closed room, and we just printed it out. And we printed it out for an operator to feel more comfortable from a psychological point of view. So the idea is that we have just the panel within the workshop at which the process engineer, not the operator, but the process engineer gives the commands. Which program has to be loaded, which components, parts has to be loaded for processing at the CNC machine. Here we're speaking about the level of skills of the operator, and it's very important for Russia. Was the territory of the country is really very big, and we have different requirements for the level of expertise, and we see the reduction of the functional responsibilities of an operator reduced. The operator is just involved in a relocation of the parts and components from a trolley to the working table, to the rotating table. Once we're speaking about the cloud, this is just the cloud we use for utilities. We use the cloud's capabilities for certain tasks, but I was really shocked with the big data analysis. Of course, the system shows the challenges in the system, but if we need to deal with readjustment of the CNC machine, then they would say, we will just give it for outsourcing. Let our subcontractors deal with this part. And that is why it is very important to organize the visits to our plants for the company CEOs. It's very important to organize such tours. We have 2 factories of this kind, and we're always ready to receive guests at our factories. And we think this will be paid by Siemens. We mean the visits, the tours. The flight will be paid by you, and as for the sausage and the beer mug, it will be at our expense. Maybe some of you want to ask our speakers. Of course, I see you are getting bored. Well, I'm not going to speak about blending, wine blending, because this became the key topic for our discussion. You know, winemakers blend the wine when they don't have good crops. That is why the developed countries have wine-making laws where they just regulate what is allowed, what is not. I would just like to give you some feedback from this discussion. Now our session is devoted to digitalization of industry, but in reality we are not speaking about digitization, we're speaking about automation. And here it is very important that all of us, my colleagues from the Avia Corporation used to speak about digital twins. It's very important that we all are in digital agenda. Of course, we're lagging behind in terms of cross-cutting, outsourcing, and different centers. But it's very important not to skip the direction in which the world thought is going in terms of competition. And this thought is going to intellectual features. And I think the focus is somehow shifted from production to design. It's important not to produce at low cost, but it's always important to invent something new. And it's very important that here we need to mention 2 things. Maybe it's related to blending as well. We have 2 tendencies in the world. One is related to transparency, globalization, and another tendency is related to the fact that developed countries, from the point of view of technology, developed countries close the information from each other. I'm not going to give you details, but you can see it in newspapers. But I think there is a ground to think. When we speak about global companies and the products that we usually use once we have the technologically advanced industry, We have certain types of products like weapon industry, defense industry, or the case related to licenses. It's a well-known case for the aviation industry. If you do not get licenses, if you are not capable of designing an airplane, you will not get it. You will not get the license. Another thing is that if we're speaking about the fact that the world is going to a concentration of intellects, and design is not just the software product. It's very important to deal with the intellectual properties, and it's very important to keep intellectual features here. And when we say that our companies are the elements in the international change, but not in the first place, but somewhere at the end of this chain, then we do not see any intellectual product. And this is what was mentioned by our colleague from the Ministry of Industry, who was lost somewhere on the way to this audience hall. I will be an opponent only in one issue. At school, I was studied that imperialism is the highest stage of capitalism, and thus digitalization, automation, is the highest stage of industrialization. I would just say that we have a new meaning of imperialism, which is called digital imperialism. But it's digital revolution 4.0. Recently, our president said that economy is not possible without digital freedom. And I think your authority shares this opinion, and those projects that you are implementing, they reflect this direction. And now, taking the opportunity of having a few minutes left, I would like all of you to give useful recommendations to companies involved in digitalization. Just briefly, I think that it's very important to raise the task correctly, why you need digitalization. If you understand why, then everything will work well. Learn digital underwater diving. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. I would like to offer everyone who is interested in digitation and labeling and marking, please come to us and start your feasibility projects without waiting for regulations from the government. Mr. Deputy Minister, thank you very much. I think now it's very important to look for the correct strategies for transformation. It's important not to live surrounded by myths. We are given the chance. Mr. Mramorov. Thank you. I think the situation is really not very simple. It's difficult to orient yourself. But probably it's just an easy advice. Find the right people and study the subject yourself. Otherwise, you won't succeed. I don't believe in consultants, even though I respect this opinion, but this is our way. And our business lady, Mrs. Revakina, be in trend. It's really very good, but don't do automation for automation. Dear friends, I think this is it. Thank you all for attending, and we hope that our today's meeting will not let you drown in the sea of digits.